Departamento de Ciências da Comunicação, FCSH, UNL.
I'm delighted to be here. This is the second time I've been able to come to Universidade Nova de Lisboa. As I hope Antonio told you, I had the opportunity, the privilege of being here last fall and teaching for much of the semester, and really came to love being in Lisbon. So I had to go to a conference in Kiev last week, and because I was in Kiev, I figured, well, I have to pass through some city in Europe to go back home, and so I arranged with Antonio to see, would you be interested in having me come again? And he said yes. So I'm happy to come and talk more about the subject that I have learned and done a lot with during my career. Actually, I got a chance also to talk at Senjor. Do you know Senjor? It's the, right, for the last 2 days I did talks there. Anybody here go to those talks? You did, okay, so you're going to hear all this again, okay? You'll be like this. Okay, she'll have to hear it all over again. But anyway, I'm glad to be here, and you can help me do the demonstration now that you know how to do this, okay? Good. If I talk too fast, tell me slow down. In fact, raise your hand and say, Steve, slow down. Everybody know how to do that? Okay, good. Okay. I'm going to talk about computer-assisted reporting and what it is, give you a talk using PowerPoint slides, which will help you follow. I'll put these slides on the internet so you can download them if you like, so that way you don't have to write everything down that I say. I created a web page with various slides and some data exercises and things like that. I created for the Senjor talk, and I'll give you the URL for that too, so you can have all that as well. Okay? Once I do the sort of PowerPoint thing, kind of talking about computer-assisted reporting, I want to spend a little bit of time demonstrating some of the things that I'm talking about. Try to show you that it's, oh, everybody look at her. Here she's coming in late. Okay, we're all, okay, how embarrassing. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate sort of some of the things that I'm talking about in computer-assisted reporting. So that's our plan tonight. So let me get started with that. And we'll pop this up. Okay. Precision journalism is the name of the concept here. Jornalismo da FCSH. Is that vaguely like Portuguese, sort of? I don't know. Okay, I'm horrible at pronouncing Portuguese, unfortunately. But what precision journalism is about tools, about things to help you be a better reporter, help you basically be able to do stories that otherwise would be really difficult to do. And I'll give you a lot of details of that here shortly. Talk a little bit about my own, here we go. My own background. I didn't get a chance to go to journalism school. I wound up, it was actually the U.S. Army taught me to be a reporter. When I was in college, I was actually a bad student. If any of you ever saw the movie Animal House, remember that movie, Animal House? That was me. I lived the Animal House life for about 2 years. Back then, if you did that, you got thrown out of college. Back then, the Vietnam War was going on, so I immediately got drafted. And the Army decided I should be a reporter. So they sent me to the Army Information School, then sent me to Vietnam as a reporter for the Army. And it was while I was in Vietnam that it occurred to me that being a reporter was actually a pretty good profession. So when I finally finished up my Army service, came back from Vietnam, went back to college and majored in political science, which happened to be my major. The good, to me, one of the wonderful things about journalism is all kinds of different interests can come into journalism. All you really have to do to be a journalist is sort of be curious, want to ask questions, get answers to things, to help make sure that people are not stealing money from the people, people are behaving correctly, that society is working, all those kinds of things are what journalism is about. So I majored in political science. I wound up spending about 23 years as a newspaper reporter in Florida. About 20 of that was at the Miami Herald down in Florida. Miami was a great city to be a journalist in because we had all the best kind of crime and corruption. There were shootouts in the street, bank robberies, drug gangs fighting, hurricanes coming through, alligators eating poodles, everything happened down in South Florida. So it was a great place to be a reporter. While I was with the Miami Herald, I covered all kinds of things. This is another, to me, very good thing about being a journalist, is you're not spending your whole life doing exactly the same thing over and over. Every day is something new. And it certainly was the case for me at the Miami Herald. I was, at various times, was a government reporter, covered the courts, justice and so on, covered politics. I was science editor, so I got to cover, space shots to the outer planets, did those kinds of things. I wrote about the census, I wrote about the lottery, all kinds of different things. It's a great job for somebody who doesn't want to do the same thing every day, day after day. And that certainly was the case with me. At the same time I was being a reporter, back in around 1982, I bought a computer, an Atari 800. Anybody ever heard of Atari? Okay. Well, back then it was very expensive. This is a brand new thing that had just come out. And I had bought it as a thing to play with at home. It was like a hobby, because I wanted to learn about it. Guys like toys, and this was a good toy to play with. So I'm at home, I'm kind of learning how to make this Atari 800 do fun things, and then I was going to work, and at the time I was covering state government. And writing about the budget and writing about legislative voting and things like that. And I began to realize that my computer actually could help me do my job better at work. So I began figuring out ways to make the computer help me do those kinds of stories that I was doing. So starting again, 1982, which is almost 30 years ago, got my first computer, began using that, and at the same time there was sort of a handful of other reporters around the country, really around the same time, very early 1980s, that began kind of discovering computers and seeing that they were something that we might be able to use in our jobs. So over the time with the Miami Herald, as I learned more and more things that I could do with a computer, I began doing kind of bigger and bigger projects, things that required sort of lots of computer power, and I'll talk about those here shortly too. I want to add that I am not a computer expert. I never took computer science. To me it's magic how they work. I have no idea what goes on inside there any more than most of you do, I suspect. But I have learned how to make the computer do things that are actually very useful to me. So kind of my lesson with all this is, if you're smart enough to be a reporter, you're smart enough to sort of figure out at least some of the tools that are now available to make it even easier to do your job. Okay, this thing called computer-assisted reporting. What is it? It's basically using computers, no surprise there, and social science methods. And I want to add that. We use social science methods like statistics and public opinion polling and sort of other kinds of tools like that. Math. I may talk a little bit tonight about some math things too. So we use the computers and the social science methods to both acquire, to get and to analyze the information to let us do stories that really otherwise would be difficult or impossible. Okay? The reason why the computer is so wonderful because it will do things that are too boring for humans to do. You know, it will look through thousands or even millions of records very quickly and find the patterns that are in there. If we had to do stories like that by looking through pieces of paper, you know, our minds would explode. We couldn't do that. Hey, Eudora, how you doing? She survived last year. Okay. So anyway, it basically lets us do stories that otherwise would be impossible. I'll give you some examples of those. But I do want to make a point about computer-assisted reporting. The most important word in that is, in fact, reporting. It's all about doing exactly the same kind of thing that you're already learning how to do or you already know how to do. It's just another way of getting information, of asking questions about the information, just like you would ask questions of a source you interview, and pulling the answers out of it. And that's really all that's going on with computer-assisted reporting. I should add that journalism is the sort of most conservative profession in terms of being strange to do something new like this. You don't hear about computer-assisted architects or computer-assisted accountants. Basically, almost all other professions that are using computers, that's what they do. You know, this is a tool that is obvious for, you know, if you're an architect or a engineer or an accountant or somebody like that, you're going to use a computer. It's only among reporters where it's seen like, ooh, this is some really strange thing that you're doing. So, so that, you know, that's sort of an odd thing about us. So anyway, reporting is the most important thing. Little, you know, quick history, I guess, of the ways of doing reporting about social problems, about things, you know, poverty or crime or things like that. For most of the history of journalism, the way we would have to do those kinds of stories was this first method. We would have to wait for some kind of authority, the government, a university, a corporation, somebody like that, to do some kind of study. When the authority had done the study, they would call a press conference. We reporters would come, say, to a room like this. We'd all sit out there. The authority would stand up front. The authority would give you what they had discovered. They might hand out, you know, press release, press passes of some kind or other. And then we reporters would go back to our offices and we'd write a story based on what the authority told us. Okay? That has been, you know, the way forever that stories were done. There are problems, to me, with that kind of reporting, though. The problem, you know, to me, the big problem is you have to rely on somebody else to decide what's going to be studied. And, you know, I don't know about here in Portugal, but certainly in the United States, there are problems that authority doesn't want to study, you know, because it would be embarrassing. You know, if government had to look at poverty or at racial discrimination or at you know, where crime is occurring or how you know, certain people are you know, taking money from the banking system or things like that, it would prove embarrassing. So they don't want to study it. And if we reporters have to sit and wait for somebody to ask those tough questions and do those kinds of studies, many things wouldn't get done. So we started finding other ways to tackle this kind of thing. Kind of the second method that got developed was this, where we would gather, in English it's anecdotes, it's basically examples, cases of a particular thing happening. Let's say we're trying to look at the problem of drunk driving, you know, driving while drinking, all over the place. If you were going to do a study like that before computer-assisted reporting, you would go talk to the police and ask for them for some examples of bad situations like that. You might talk to the judges. You might find a family who's lost somebody because of a drunk driving accident, and you would use those examples in your story, and then you would sort of say, well, and there's a lot more of this kind of thing, but you wouldn't really be able to give you know, a solid measurement of the size of the problem.